or binding thread or bending rubber. We want the glue joint to be as thin as possible, so during procedure it is passed through the patient without any distress. We will now glue our top binding. Carefully hold scope, being conscious of our first glue job. Turning scope around. Covering the area in between each Scotch tape loop. Again, making it as thin as possible. Gluing these joints takes time and practice. It may be advisable to practice on an older or loaner endoscope. We have now glued both bindings with our paddle or toothpick. Again, at this time, if you notice any objects pointing out of the glue, use your solder iron to carefully melt away foreign object, being extremely careful you do not melt into bending rubber sheath or insertion tube. Once we are sure that glue is uniform with no bubbles or foreign objects sticking out of our glue, we can then remove our Scotch tape The Scotch tape should make a clean binding. Remove all 4 pieces of Scotch tape, pulling towards the glue job. This makes for a clean binding. We have now removed the 4 pieces of Scotch tape from our endoscope. Be careful not to get any epoxy on the bending rubber or insertion tube when removing Scotch tape. Using a toothpick and a piece of lens paper or thin paper toweling, taking a small amount of alcohol, if any bending rubber epoxy has leaked underneath the previous Scotch tape, you can clean away any glue that had leaked out of Scotch tape to make a clean, flush epoxy joint. Turn the endoscope over if necessary in order to reach complete 360 degrees. Again, any epoxy that has leaked previously underneath the Scotch tape joints can be easily cleaned away with a toothpick and a paper towel. On smaller instruments, you can use just the toothpick and some alcohol and clean up to the glue joint to make a nice, smooth, clean edge. If bubbles appear in any part of our epoxy, we can take what's left of our glue and fill in any bubbles or holes that might pop out during our gluing. Another method to get rid of any bubbles or debris is, again, use your soldering iron and gently touch epoxy to fill in hole or remove debris. Once you feel that glue completely covers and looks cosmetically good, take any object, in this case a tape dispenser, laying the insertion tube in cradle so our glue will not touch either our working area or any other objects which will destroy our glue. Depending on manufacturer specifications, glue may take some time to set up. You will periodically have to go back to check your glue in order to turn the instrument if glue is sagging on one side, and to check for any bubbles or foreign debris that might stick out through our glue joints. Again, be sure to check your glue to see if it starts to sag. It will be necessary to turn the instrument around in order to make a uniform glue joint. It is advisable to let your bending rubber sheath epoxy dry overnight and at least 24 hours. This will allow the epoxy to set to manufacturer specifications in order to withstand repeated sterilization. If bending rubber epoxy is not let to set dry properly, it will chip off endoscope during sterilization and possibly even during examinations. It is very critical that your epoxy is allowed to dry properly overnight. After your epoxy is dried overnight or 24 hours, it is advisable to check the instrument for any leaks by pressure testing the instrument in water and checking for any leaks that may be in your bending rubber replacement. If there are leaks, you will need to repeat the procedure and reapply another bending rubber sheath. We will now disassemble the up, down, left, right control section in order to gain access to it, to adjust the up, down, and left, right lock knobs, and to make the necessary repairs and adjustments if there are leaks in the body control section. First step, using your number 2 screwdriver, is to remove the left-right free lock knob trim ring .90% of the time this ring will break due to the fact that it is glued in with black RTV, so it will need to be replaced. When disassembling the up, down, left, right lock knob assembly from the body, it is best to take off each piece one at a time, laying it on your work area in sequence. So when we reassemble the up, down, left, right lock knob assembly, we can reassemble back in sequence with the parts starting from beginning to end. First, we have the left-right trim ring. Next step is to loosen the 3 set screws which hold on the left-right lock knob assembly cap. Find your set screws and loosen all 3. Notice where the lock knobs fit when they are in the free position. They both line up diagonally to the head of the instrument. Again, take the parts off in sequence, lay them on your work area so you can reassemble back in reverse order. Retrieve your small nut driver loosen the 2 small nuts on the top of the left-right lock assembly. Put these with the other parts in sequence. The next step is to unscrew the left-right lock assembly counterclockwise. This assembly will only unscrew counterclockwise. Remove this assembly. Be sure to keep it intact. There are many small parts internally. Put this part with the others in sequence. Next step is to pry out the left-right knob airtight cap with either a small number 1 or 2 screwdriver, tweezers, or dull knife blade. Be careful not to damage the O-ring inside or the knob itself. This part, when reinstalled, will have the groove on the top. Underneath it is flat. The indented groove will be on top. Put this with the other parts in sequence. Next step is to remove left-right pressure plate with either a small number 1 or 2 screwdriver, tweezers, it may be necessary to turn over endoscope and tap out this piece. It will fall out with gravity. Put your pressure plate back with the other parts in sequence. Using a Phillips head screwdriver, unscrew the 2 small Phillips screws in the left-right pressure plate bottom retaining ring. Be sure not to lose these 2 small Phillips screws. With a small screwdriver, remove locking ring. Put this with the other parts in reverse sequence. Slide off your C-ring from your left-right bottom pressure plate, which attaches to the center shaft. Put your C-ring with the other parts again in sequence. We can now pull off the left-right lock knob. It should slide off. The pressure plate will fall out, but you can keep this inside the left-right knob assembly. Put the knob assembly with the other parts in reverse sequence. The up-down knob will now be able to pull off straight up center shaft, exposing the up-down free locking mechanism. Put your up-down knob with the other parts in reverse sequence. This is as far as we will go with our knob assembly. We will now lubricate this locking assembly with a good quality LPS or WD-40. Spray a very small amount of LPS or WD-40 in the up-down free lock mechanism. Move the assembly back and forth to let the greaseless lubricant permeate the locking mechanism. Use a paper towel to clean up any excess greaseless lubricant from the Olympus body section. We will now reassemble the Olympus up-down left-right locking knob assembly and correcting any leaks upon reassembly. The up-down knob has internally an O-ring. You can remove this O-ring with a small screwdriver, being careful not to cut into the O-ring itself. Again, being very careful, remove the O-ring from inside the up-down knob shaft. 9 times out of 10, this is the O-ring that will cause leaks in the up-down knob itself. Again, make sure your O-ring is clean of all debris. If this O-ring has any pit marks or scratches or cuts, or if it's even broken, it will need to be replaced, because it will not form a proper airtight seal with the knobs and the shaft. So if this O-ring is damaged in any way, it will need to be replaced. Reinsert your O-ring back into the knob section. It will take a little doing. You might need your small screwdriver to fit it back into the slot at the top of the knob. Reinstall the up-down knob back onto the shaft. Be sure there is no debris on the up-down shaft. You can use your paintbrush with white lithium grease to clean off any debris. Slide your up-down knob onto the shaft with the up-down letters pointing towards the head of the instrument. We will now adjust the up-down knob. Olympus knobs are usually very tight. You can, however, loosen them a little bit by taking a pair of dividers and fitting them into the 2 holes on the ring on top of the up-down knob. You can unscrew this ring and remove, taking off the knob itself from the up-down assembly. There are 2 sets of rings. In order to loosen the tightness on Olympus scope, these rings move independently. You'll need to unscrew this ring counterclockwise to loosen the stiffness of the knobs. Be sure to match the grooves when reapplying the knob. Once you have turned the grooves counterclockwise a few turns, reapply the up-down knob. Place your retaining ring back on over the threads and tighten clockwise. Give it a good hand tight seal. Now, apply your lock by flicking your up-down lock assembly towards the head of the instrument. And now you can feel to check for the tightness that you have released by adjusting the cam on the up-down block assembly. If it is still too tight, you can remove ring again and adjust the cams down clockwise or anti-clockwise to get the proper tightness that you prefer. We will now reapply the left-right knob assembly. Again, be sure that the letters and arrows face towards the head of the instrument. Clean off any debris using your paintbrush and white lithium grease. Slide the left-right knob over shaft, feeling the shaft going into the body section, making contact with the grooves inside the chain drive assembly. Using your paintbrush with white lithium grease, clean off the left-right pressure plate. Now, from the parts that you have reverse sequenced, we have now reapplied the up-down knob and the left-right knob. We will now replace the C-clip to the shaft over the left-right knob using a pair of tweezers. Fit the C-clip in the slot above the base of the left-right knob. Slide the clip onto the shaft. If this C-clip did not fit, it meant that the left-right knob was not seated down properly into the chain drive assembly inside the body section. Next step is to retrieve your locking ring from the parts that you have reverse sequenced. There are two holes which the Phillips screws will fit in. They will match with the holes in the base plate of the left-right knob. Retrieve your Phillips screws with your Phillips screwdriver. Reapply and tighten down, hand tight, your Phillips screws. Retrieve your other plate and clean off with some paper towel or lens paper. Put clean side down shaft so it rests on top of the left-right pressure plate. Next step is to retrieve from your reverse order sequence parts your left-right waterproof cap. Using your paintbrush and white lithium grease, carefully clean out the O-ring in between. Again, if need be, it might need to be taken out, checked for any cuts or tears or breaks, and replaced if necessary. Clean out O-ring, and in addition, clean O-ring on the outside perimeter of watertight cap. When reapplying this cap to left-right knob, be sure that the open groove is facing up. Careful not to pinch O-ring. Next step is to grab your left-right locking mechanism. It goes on with the open groove facing down. Be careful when refitting this piece, as the internal parts will tend to push up and break away if not seated down properly. This unit screws on counterclockwise. Be sure to push down. The pressure plate if it has popped off. Now we will adjust the left-right locking mechanism. If for any reason the parts in here have popped out, you may need to reseat them by pulling off the copper top plate. Removing the copper top plate exposes the internal greased assembly. There is a locking pin. There are 2 copper springs and a tri-locking assembly that needs to be flush. If necessary, these parts will have to be moved until clips are uniform with the sides and the locking clip. Once everything is seated, reinstall your copper plate. To adjust the left-right locking assembly, with your hand, tighten the assembly counterclockwise, then back it off approximately quarter turn to 2 o'clock. The next step is to break apart the small nuts that we previously took off. There are 2. Take out your nuts. Take the first nut and screw down onto shaft using your nut driver. Tighten down, finger tight. Do not apply excessive force to these nuts on the shaft, otherwise it will break the control section shaft, which then will need to be sent to a repair facility because it is very complicated repair. Again, do not apply excessive force to these nuts on the shaft. Use a small amount of Loctite to the top of the shaft post. Retrieve your second nut and screw down carefully onto first nut. Again, only finger tight. Do not apply excessive force to these nuts on the shaft, otherwise it will break the shaft. Once the nuts are down and a small amount of Loctite is applied, we will take the left-right locking free cap, and being sure that the up-down is in the free position, we will match up the left-right free lock with the up-down so that they are diagonally equivalent. Using 2 fingers on top of the left-right cap, retrieve your small number 2 screwdriver and tighten the 3 set screws. Once we have done that, we will now check the left-right lock mechanism to be sure that it is operating properly within manufacturer's specifications. It is not necessary to adjust the tightness on the left-right knob. By flicking the left-right free button to the lock position, we test to make sure that the knobs do lock and retroflex the distal end by holding it in place. To check to be sure that it is free, flick it to the free position and the knobs should bend back to a loose position. If the left-right free cap does not match up with the up-down free knob, in this case we'll need to loosen the 3 set screws again and match it up with the up-down free knob. If after performing this adjustment the endoscope is not locking properly with the left-right, it will be necessary to remove the cap, the 2 nuts off the shaft, and perform the procedure again where you hand tight the knob counterclockwise and then loosen off to a clock. Once you have achieved the proper locking feel for the left-right knob, then you can reseal the knob assembly. Again, be sure that both free knobs match in diagonally position. It may take several times in order to match these. Be sure to tighten down the 3 set screws properly in order to seal the left-right cap to the body section. Once you have achieved the up-down and left-right lock knobs to meet diagonally and to properly lock the left-right angulation knob, we will need to reapply the SP8KTR left-right trim ring. Using your black RTV, apply small amounts to the 3 set screw holes in the left-right lock knob assembly. This seals up the hole, otherwise it will leak when pressure tested. Seal all 3 Phillips head screws with black RTV. This will also keep the trim ring from falling off. Take your trim ring and with the notch side up, slide it over the longer post and carefully slide it up and over the knob. Use your number 1 screwdriver to be sure it has fit around the left-right lock knob. Now we will pressure test the endoscope to make sure that all the seals are sealed and there are no leaks in the lock knob controller. Submerge the endoscope while pressure testing to make sure that there are no leaks in the knob section you have just repaired. If there are leaks, you will need to disassemble the knobs again, as we discussed and we seal to be sure that there are absolutely no leaks